Tonight, we journey into Greek myths, ancient stories whispered by firelight and etched into stone long before you or I drew breath. Tales of heroes who challenged gods, mortals who stole from eternity, and fires that refused to fade. Our story begins in a forgotten village, quiet under a moonless sky, with a boy whose destiny would shake the very foundations of Olympus. Long ago, when the gods still watched closely over the mortal world, in a small forge at the edge of a silent village, there lived a woman whose skill was legendary, though few knew her name. Her forge burned bright, hotter than any other, lighting the night sky as though it sought to rival the stars themselves. Her name was Callista, and she crafted blades that sang and armor that laughed at arrows. She was no demigod, but her hands knew secrets that even the gods envied. Yet the village feared what it did not understand. They whispered she had made a pact with Hephaestus, god of blacksmiths, outcasts, and fire. No mortal, they believed, could craft as she did without divine intervention. Callista neither confirmed nor denied their suspicions, for her world was the glow of molten iron and the rhythm of hammer against anvil. It was on a night heavy with storm and stars hidden by clouds that Hephaestus himself came to her forge. Not in grandeur, but cloaked in shadow, humble as the soot that marked his domain. He spoke no words, gave no grand speeches. Yet that night, the forge burned hotter, and the metal flowed like silk beneath her hammer. 9 moons later, a child was born, named Alethius. He did not cry at his first breath. He watched the fire with eyes too wise, too quiet, unsettling to those around him. Alethius grew not as other boys did. By 5, he shaped iron. By 7, blades of impossible balance. And by 12, he knew the secret ways of flame and metal, fire and will. He spoke little, his silence heavy with intent. The villagers' fear turned to reverence, though none dared call him friend. The world he knew began to grow cold. Villagers came with stories of hearths refusing to burn, torches flickering out as though fire itself had forgotten its warmth. Fields grew barren, winters stretched longer, and a slow despair crept over the land like frost. Elders murmured that humanity had angered the gods, that Prometheus's gift of fire was being reclaimed, punishment for mortal arrogance. Callista watched her son closely, aware his silence hid something deeper. She saw the way his gaze lingered on dying embers, how his fingers twitched as if longing to rekindle flames now cold. She knew he felt the chill settling over the world, the fading of humanity's oldest gift. One night, as snow fell softly, blanketing fields in quiet white, she found him staring into the heart of the forge, fire dancing in his eyes. Without turning, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "The fire is fading, Mother. Not just here, but everywhere. Olympus holds it now, locked away from mortals. They say we no longer deserve it." Callista laid a hand gently upon his shoulder, feeling a strength there beyond mortal years. "And what do you believe, Alethius?" He turned to face her, eyes deep and calm. "I believe fire belongs to those brave enough to carry it." That night, Callista understood what fate awaited her son. Not a life of quiet craftsmanship, but one of storms and steel, challenge and sacrifice. She saw the shadow of Prometheus in his eyes, that ancient defiance that had first gifted humanity warmth and thought. At dawn, he left the forge. No weapons in hand, no armor to shield him, only a determination colder and brighter than the stars. Callista did not weep, did not try to stop him, for she knew destiny when she saw it. She watched until he vanished beyond the horizon, the snow swallowing his footsteps, erasing all trace of his departure. Thus began the journey of Alethius, who would climb not only mountains, but destiny itself, facing guardians born of nightmare, oracles whispering doom, and gods jealous of their power. His quest was simple, yet impossible. Reclaim the eternal flame, return it to humanity, and remind both mortal and divine that true strength lies not in fire, but in those willing to bear its heat. He did not look back. The forge's glow faded behind him, replaced by the pale, uncertain light of dawn. Ahead lay Olympus, towering, hidden by storms older than time. Within it waited fire and fate. Alethius traveled far, following a path that wasn't drawn on any map, guided only by whispers carried on winds older than the stars. Each step he took was one away from warmth and comfort, deeper into wilderness, closer to the mountain whose summit brushed against the realm of the divine. He crossed villages abandoned by warmth, homes darkened not just by shadows, but by hopelessness. There were no fires in hearths, no torches along roads. Each place he passed seemed more silent than the last, as though life itself was retreating, leaving behind only emptiness. Eventually, his path led him to Delphi, where once great kings sought counsel and heroes had heard prophecies whispered in sacred caves. But Delphi was now nearly forgotten, its temples cracked, overgrown, its sacred springs dried to dust. Yet one voice still lingered there, wrapped in shadow, awaiting the one who would dare listen. Alethius entered the temple grounds quietly, reverently. The halls echoed his footsteps, bouncing gently against crumbling marble. Statues stood watch, eyes blank, worn smooth by centuries of wind and neglect. He made his way deeper, guided by a subtle, pulsing hum, a vibration in the air, ancient and waiting. At the heart of Delphi, seated atop a throne of broken stone, was the oracle. Her face was veiled, her form draped in robes whose color was lost to dust and darkness. Alethius stopped before her, respectful but unwavering. She did not move, not at first. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant whisper of wind. Then, slowly, she inhaled, and her voice, rough as stone yet clear as crystal, filled the chamber. "Alethius," she said, speaking his name as if she had known it from the world's first breath. "You have come seeking fire." He nodded once, the gesture simple, certain. "You will climb Olympus," the oracle continued, her voice deepening, echoing against the walls. "You will reach the eternal flame. But understand this, child of mortal and divine. Fire never leaves Olympus willingly. To take it is to steal from the gods themselves, to challenge the order they have set." "I know," he answered calmly, voice steady despite the weight of her words. The oracle leaned forward slightly, her veil shifting like mist. "The gods will oppose you. Your path leads through darkness, guarded by death itself. Olympus will test you, break you if it can." Alethius stood firm, eyes unflinching. "Then let it try." She laughed, a sound worn thin, more sorrowful than mocking. "Do you not fear fate, Alethius? Do you not tremble at what awaits those who defy Olympus?" He met her gaze, quiet, resolute. "I fear a world left in darkness more than I fear the gods." The oracle leaned back, the chamber growing colder around her. "Then hear my words clearly. To claim the eternal flame, you must descend before you rise. Beneath Olympus waits Cerberus, guardian of the gates to realms mortal feet should never touch. He will allow no passage to those unworthy. Beyond him lies Hermes, swift and cunning, bearer of curses and gifts. He will test your spirit, your resolve. And at the summit waits Zeus himself, unseen yet watching, judging. You must be prepared to lose everything, even yourself." I am prepared, he said, his voice soft but unyielding. She sighed deeply, the sound heavy with memory and regret. So was Prometheus. Remember him, Aletheus. Remember that fire burns brightest when it consumes. The chamber fell silent once more, her voice fading to echoes. The oracle had spoken, her vision spent. Aletheus turned away, the weight of her words settling upon him like armor forged of shadow and truth. He left Delphi as quietly as he'd arrived, his path now clearer, yet infinitely more dangerous. Ahead lay Olympus, cold, towering, indifferent, and beneath it, the gates of death itself. He carried no blade, no shield, only the fire in his heart and the whisper of destiny at his back. Days turned into nights, each colder than the last, each step heavier, yet more determined. He passed through valleys cloaked in mist, forests stripped bare by eternal winter, rivers frozen into silence. The closer he drew to Olympus, the less the world seemed alive. It was as though the gods' withdrawal had drained the very essence of life from the land itself. Finally, he reached the foot of the mountain. Olympus did not rise gradually. It stood as a sheer face of stone, cold, forbidding, towering impossibly high. Clouds circled its peak like vultures, lightning flickering silently within them. No path guided the way upward, only bare rock and silence. He paused just once, breathing deeply, then placed his hands upon the stone and began to climb. The climb was relentless, every foothold narrow, every grip tenuous. Wind clawed at him, icy fingers slipping beneath his clothes, chilling flesh to bone. Yet he pressed upward, driven by a purpose deeper than cold or exhaustion. Above, the mountain whispered in a language of ancient stone and frost. It mocked silently, daring him to falter, to let gravity reclaim him. Each ascent brought sharper pains, more biting winds, and less forgiving stone. After hours, or perhaps days, time having lost meaning, he reached a ledge wide enough to rest. Clouds drifted around him, thick and silent, obscuring the world below. He stood for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling the mountain shift subtly beneath him, alive and wary of his presence. When he turned, Hermes stood there, casual and smiling faintly, as if he'd been waiting patiently the entire time. He leaned against empty air, sandals feathered, cloak rippling gently with an unseen breeze. "Aletheus," Hermes greeted him softly, eyes gleaming with cunning amusement. "You truly don't give up easily." Aletheus regarded him calmly. "You said you had a gift, but I see only tests and warnings." "Ah," Hermes chuckled lightly. "Gifts and tests, sometimes they're one and the same. You mortals misunderstand us gods. We do not deal in simple truths." "What is it you want?" Aletheus asked, tiredness edging into his voice despite his resolve. Hermes straightened slightly, face turning serious for the briefest instant. "I want you to understand. Fire was stolen once before. Prometheus paid dearly, chained forever to suffer for his defiance. Do you think Olympus has grown kinder?" "No," Aletheus replied quietly. "But humanity suffers now. The world grows colder. Life fades without warmth or hope. The gods' indifference is already punishment enough." Hermes nodded slowly, almost sympathetically. "Perhaps. Yet Olympus sees differently. To them, mortal struggle is brief, a mere spark in eternity. Why risk angering beings who wield power beyond imagining?" "Because they wield it carelessly," Aletheus said firmly. "Mortals deserve better." Hermes watched him, eyes unreadable, then sighed. "Very well, mortal hero. If you're determined, Take my warning as a gift. You will indeed reach the flame, but the cost will be greater than you imagine. The fire of Olympus burns hotter than mere flesh can bear." He vanished before Aletheus could respond, leaving only silence and mist behind. Gathering strength, Aletheus continued upward. The mountain grew harsher, its surface glass-like with ice. Storms began, lightning splitting the clouds, thunder echoing like divine laughter. Each bolt seemed aimed at him, yet somehow missing, testing, but not destroying. Hours blurred again, lost in the storm's fury. Eventually, through a break in the clouds, he glimpsed a cave. Dark, yawning like an open wound in the mountain's side. He felt its pull instinctively and moved toward it, slipping inside just as lightning shattered the rocks where he'd stood moments earlier. The cave was cold, darker than darkness, filled with a silence heavy enough to crush hope. He moved slowly, hand along damp walls, guiding himself forward into the unknown. Minutes stretched to hours, until finally, deep within the mountain, the tunnel widened into a vast underground chamber. At its center stood an immense gate of iron and obsidian, carved with imagery of souls lost and forgotten. And before it lay Cerberus, the guardian of the gates of death itself, massive, three-headed, breathing slowly, each breath echoing through the cavern like distant thunder. Aletheus approached carefully, each step an eternity of caution. Cerberus's eyes opened slowly, 6 glowing orbs piercing the gloom. It rose, fur bristling, towering impossibly high, its snarls resonating deep in Aletheus's bones. But he did not flinch. Instead, he knelt calmly, unwrapped the collar he'd carried and presented it, whispering softly words etched into his memory. Grief, loyalty, memory. The beast paused, watching, then lowered each massive head in turn. It accepted the collar with quiet dignity, as though recognizing an old truth, a bond formed in memory rather than command. With a slow rumble, Cerberus stepped aside, allowing passage through gates untouched by mortal feet for generations. They swung open silently, revealing stairs spiraling upward, glistening faintly as though lit by starlight. Aletheus ascended, his heartbeat synchronized with each step, each breath matched by the pulse of the mountain itself. As he climbed, the air grew warmer, heavy with the scent of ancient power. He emerged finally onto a plateau high above clouds, beneath stars brighter than he'd ever seen. Ahead lay the summit, bathed in pale, ethereal light, a soft glow emanating from the eternal flame itself, held in a brazier older than time, guarded by silence and the unblinking gaze of eternity. His heart quickened, yet his step remained measured, for he knew Olympus watched closely now. The final climb awaited, one last challenge, not of strength, but of will. The peak was bathed in a gentle, surreal glow, as though moonlight itself had chosen this place to linger eternally. The flame, white and pure, danced silently atop a marble pedestal at the mountain's summit. It was mesmerizing, alive, aware, a silent guardian of divine secrets. Aletheus approached slowly, feeling its power radiate outward, brushing against him like invisible threads of heat and memory. The air around it shimmered gently, as if the very fabric of reality recognized the flame's significance. He reached out cautiously, not to grasp, not yet, but to feel. The flame responded, reaching back toward him, tendrils of light twining around his fingertips, welcoming yet testing, warm yet wary. And then, a voice, a whisper behind him, as subtle as the turning of pages or the rustle of forgotten leaves. "You have come far, mortal." He turned slowly, unsurprised to see Hermes again, standing quietly nearby, solemn this time, his earlier levity abandoned. "You warned me?" Aletheus said calmly. "Yet here you are," Hermes replied softly. "Few mortals ever ascend so high. Fewer still return from these heights unchanged." "I did not come to remain unchanged," Aletheus answered. "I came to reclaim fire for humanity." Hermes sighed deeply, glancing upward toward the flame, his gaze heavy with unspoken truths. "Fire is more than heat, more than warmth. It is creation, destruction, potential itself. To take it is to reshape destiny." "And to leave it here," Aletheus countered, "is to accept the cold fate Olympus decreed for humanity." Hermes shook his head slowly. "You speak like Prometheus, brave, defiant, certain of your righteousness. Do you understand the price he paid? Do you grasp eternity?" Aletheus stepped closer to the flame, eyes steady. "Prometheus chose to suffer so humanity could rise. I am prepared to do the same, if necessary." Hermes regarded him quietly, sadness edging into his expression. "It will be necessary, Aletheus. The gods do not relinquish their treasures easily. If you claim this fire, you become its keeper, bound to its fate. It will burn you, consume you, in ways deeper than flesh." For a moment, silence held between them, heavy with understanding. Finally, Hermes nodded. "Then make your choice clearly. Claim the flame, or leave it untouched. But know, once chosen, fate is fixed." Aletheus faced the eternal flame once more, its glow reflecting softly in his eyes. He breathed deeply, then reached forward decisively, grasping the heart of divine fire itself. In that instant, the world seemed to shatter around him. Heat surged through his body, intense, searing, reshaping flesh and bone, spirit and purpose. It was agony and ecstasy combined, a transcendent pain that erased thought, replacing it with pure awareness. He fell to his knees, the flame sinking into him, merging with him. It filled his veins with molten power, lighting every nerve with blinding brilliance. The mountain trembled beneath him, Olympus itself acknowledging the shift of power, the theft of its sacred essence. Hermes watched silently, expression unreadable, witnessing the transformation of mortal to something more, something both less and greater. When the pain finally faded, Aletheus rose slowly, changed irrevocably. His skin glowed softly, veins tracing paths of faint luminescence beneath flesh. His eyes were twin stars, bearing the eternal flame within them. The brazier stood empty now, dark and cold. Olympus's greatest secret stolen once again, this time not by deception, but by choice. Hermes stepped forward, placing a gentle hand upon Aletheus's shoulder. "It is done. You have claimed fire, and fire has claimed you." Aletheus nodded quietly, understanding now the full weight of what he'd done. He felt the flame within him, living, breathing, restless, its presence both burden and blessing, promise and threat. "You must return to humanity," Hermes said softly, voice gentle but firm. "But you cannot return as you were. You are flame now, its bearer, its guardian. The warmth you carry will be humanity's salvation, but it will also be your curse." Aletheus met Hermes's gaze, determination unshaken despite the gravity of his words. "If my life must fuel humanity's hope, I accept it." Hermes squeezed his shoulder once, respect evident in his eyes. "Then descend, fire-bearer. The world waits below, colder now than when you left it." As Hermes vanished once more, Aletheus began his descent. Each step away from Olympus felt heavier, each breath carrying the knowledge of what he'd become. When he reached the foothills, the land around him began to awaken, as though sensing the fire he carried. Frost retreated, streams melted, and dormant life stirred, gently at first, then more boldly. The warmth within him spread outward, rekindling hope, reigniting humanity's forgotten strength. Yet, even as he watched the world bloom anew around him, Aletheus knew his own journey had just begun. The flame would sustain humanity, but would it sustain him? He carried eternity now, both blessing and burden, in every heartbeat. 5. Aletheus traveled from village to village, city to city, silently rekindling hearths that had long forgotten warmth. Wherever he walked, life returned. The flame within him did not diminish. Rather, it grew stronger, brighter, burning gently beneath his skin like a quiet, eternal sunrise. News of his journey spread quickly. Villagers whispered his name with awe. Children watched him pass wide-eyed, their laughter returning with newfound warmth. Elders nodded knowingly, recognizing the ancient pattern repeating itself. The mortal bearer of divine flame, the gift and its price intertwined. Yet, the blessing he carried was not without consequence. With every fire he ignited, every hearth rekindled, he felt himself diminished slightly. Not weaker, but lighter, more ethereal. It was as though each gift of fire drew away a part of his mortal form, slowly replacing it with something less tangible, less anchored to the world he once knew. At first, he barely noticed this subtle transformation. But soon, Aletheus began to sense the world differently. Ordinary objects felt insubstantial. Voices grew distant, like echoes from another realm. He began to perceive not only warmth and cold, but intentions, desires, fears that flickered beneath human words like hidden embers. One evening, in a village he could scarcely name, an old woman approached him cautiously, holding a child whose breath rattled weakly, body trembling from cold no fire could touch. "Please," she whispered softly, eyes pleading. "The fire in you, can it heal?" He paused, uncertain for the first time since leaving Olympus. The flame he bore was warmth, hope, and life. But was it also healing? He met the child's gaze, eyes clouded with illness, yet shining with faint determination, and something within him stirred. A memory, perhaps, or simply compassion. Slowly, he knelt, placing a gentle hand upon the child's forehead. He let the warmth within him flow outward gently, carefully, like coaxing a candle flame from embers. The child's breathing steadied, color returning slowly to pale cheeks. The woman wept quietly in gratitude, murmuring prayers and blessings he could barely hear. But Aletheus felt drained, the exchange deeper, more personal than merely rekindling fire. He realized then the truth Hermes had warned of. The flame within him was powerful, yet it drew from the essence of his own being. He left quietly, continuing his journey, more aware than ever of the price he paid with each act of giving. Yet he did not stop, could not stop. The world needed warmth, hope, healing, and if his existence was the fuel for that hope, so be it. Weeks passed into months. The fire spread across lands that had grown accustomed to perpetual winter, sparking change and renewal. Fields once frozen bore new harvests. Homes long silent echoed again with laughter and song. Humanity rose from its long sleep, driven by the fire he had stolen from Olympus. But as the world blossomed anew, Aletheus faded. Villagers began noticing him less and less, their eyes sliding past him as though he were shadow rather than flesh. Children who once ran alongside him no longer saw him clearly, recognizing only the warmth he left behind, forgetting the bearer himself. In a quiet grove beneath stars grown unfamiliar, Hermes appeared again, his expression thoughtful and melancholy. "Aletheus," he spoke softly, not surprised when Aletheus barely turned to face him, eyes distant, gaze filled with flickering flame. "You understand now, don't you? The fire you carry sustains the world, yet it consumes you. The brighter the flame, the less of you remains." Aletheus nodded slowly, voice gentle yet firm. "I knew the cost when I claimed the flame." Hermes sighed, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, though it passed through him slightly, like touching mist. "Prometheus endured eternity in chains. You endure eternity differently, by dissolving into the very gift you give." Aletheus looked at Hermes then, understanding clear and calm. "Then my eternity will be warmth, healing, life. That is enough." Hermes stepped back, eyes shining with quiet respect. "You have become more than mortal, more than God. You have become hope itself, unseen yet ever present. Mortals will forget your name, but they will never forget your warmth." Aletheus felt peace then, a profound, quiet acceptance. He continued onward, each step lighter, each breath quieter. Villagers no longer saw a man when he passed, only a gentle wind, warm and comforting, leaving fire in hearths and smiles on faces. Eventually, he returned to the forge where his journey began. The building stood empty, silent. His mother, Callista, long since gone, her presence lingering only as echoes within soot-covered walls. Aletheus stepped inside quietly, the forge springing to life at his approach, flames leaping joyfully, recognizing their kin. He smiled faintly, feeling at home even as he faded gently into the fire itself, his body becoming warmth, his breath becoming flame. In that final moment, Aletheus understood fully. He had not stolen fire from Olympus to give to humanity. He had become the fire itself, eternal and selfless, forever warming a world that would never know his name. Long after his physical form faded into gentle embers, the world continued to thrive, warmed by a fire that no longer required a mortal hand to kindle. The presence of Aletheus lingered subtly yet powerfully, unseen and unnamed, felt in every hearth, every sunlit field, every candle glowing softly against darkness. Humanity moved forward, unaware of the quiet guardian who had given himself completely for their renewal. Tales were whispered around firesides of a mysterious warmth that returned when all hope seemed lost, of flames that needed no fuel, lighting hearths on winter nights with gentle, persistent heat. But the name Aletheus gradually faded from human tongues, becoming nothing more than a forgotten echo. Yet, forgotten names do not erase the deeds behind them. Aletheus lived now not in flesh, but in the subtle energies weaving through the world, a gentle current of warmth, inspiration, and quiet strength. Poets found new words, artists rediscovered colors, lovers felt their hearts quicken with deeper passion, each unknowingly touched by the fire he'd become. One day, centuries later, in a village whose name had changed countless times, a young woman sat beside an empty hearth, grieving quietly. Her heart was heavy, her spirit weary from loss and hardship. She closed her eyes, whispering softly, not in prayer, but in longing, a silent plea for warmth, for hope, for anything to chase away her despair. As if in answer, a soft glow began to flicker within the empty fireplace. Her eyes opened slowly, disbelieving at first, then widening as the embers grew steadily into gentle flames. She reached forward instinctively, feeling not heat alone, but something deeper, comfort, reassurance, strength. Her grief, though still present, felt lighter, shared by something intangible yet undeniably present. Word spread quickly of the miracle hearth that ignited without wood or spark, drawing pilgrims from across lands to witness the phenomenon. Yet, as before, they saw no hero, no god, only the fire itself, warm, comforting, silently encouraging life to thrive despite struggle. Stories multiplied, merging into legends whispered by elders, sung softly to children before sleep. They spoke of warmth appearing mysteriously when least expected, of frozen rivers thawing overnight, of fields blooming inexplicably in midwinter. Always the flame, unseen yet ever present, brought renewal and hope. In forgotten corners of ancient libraries, scholars began rediscovering fragmented texts. Stories faded almost beyond legibility, recounting the tale of a mortal who had climbed Olympus and stolen the eternal flame. Though fragmented and incomplete, these texts hinted at sacrifices made, struggles endured, and an unnamed hero who willingly faded into myth to ensure humanity's survival. The truth of Aletheus's journey gradually became legend, then myth, then something beyond myth, a universal symbol of selflessness, sacrifice, and unseen guardianship. The name vanished entirely, replaced by titles that held no specifics yet carried profound meaning. The warmth bringer, the silent flame, the unseen guardian. Hermes, observing silently from distant Olympus, smiled gently, knowing the full circle of the story he had witnessed. Mortals forgot heroes' names, but they never forgot the essence of their deeds. In giving himself fully, Aletheus had transcended both mortal and divine, becoming something eternal, intangible, yet infinitely powerful. Years turned into centuries, centuries into millennia, and still the flame burned quietly. Empires rose and fell, wars ravaged lands and healed again, and through it all, humanity endured, guided by an unseen warmth, sustained by quiet hope. It is said now, by those who remember stories older than stone, that when despair is deepest, when cold threatens to claim even the bravest hearts, one need only close their eyes and whisper softly, not a name, but a longing for warmth. The flame will answer, gentle yet unwavering, bringing comfort to weary spirits, strength to faltering souls. And so it continues, unseen yet forever felt, a legacy carried not by name or fame, but by the quiet strength of warmth itself. Aletheus had become more than myth. He had become the silent guardian of humanity's enduring spirit, a flame that would never extinguish, for it was now part of life itself. In the quiet spaces between breaths, the gentle crackle of fire holds secrets whispered by winds, long silent, remembered by stars grown dim. Aletheus lives in these whispers, his spirit forever intertwined with humanity, an unseen warmth guiding them gently forward, step by quiet step, into an unknown yet hopeful future. The forge where his journey began still stands, forgotten and untouched, waiting patiently for the rare traveler who pauses there to listen. Sometimes, on clear nights when the air is still, the faint sound of hammer striking anvil echoes softly, as though the forge itself remembers the boy who became flame, who sacrificed everything to ensure the world would never again know endless cold. Yet, even Olympus could not ignore the profound shift below. The gods observed quietly, distant and thoughtful. They had seen mortals rise and fall, empires blossom and fade, but never had they witnessed such a subtle yet powerful influence permeating the mortal world, an influence born not from grandeur, but from humble sacrifice. Zeus, mighty yet silent upon his throne, pondered deeply. He recalled Prometheus, chained eternally for defying divine order, and felt a quiet stirring of something like regret. Had Olympus misunderstood the nature of fire? Had they underestimated humanity's potential and the strength drawn from unseen hope? Hermes noticed Zeus's quiet contemplation and approached respectfully, his presence light as always, yet thoughtful. "Father," he spoke softly, choosing words carefully, "do you see now the true nature of what mortals carry within?" Zeus's eyes remained distant, watching clouds drift below Olympus. "Mortals wield power differently than we do," he replied slowly, his voice deep yet surprisingly gentle. "Their strength lies not in force, but in endurance, in quiet persistence against odds we deem insurmountable." Hermes nodded quietly, glancing down toward the mortal realm. Alethius showed us this clearly. He did not seek glory or worship. He sought only to rekindle hope. Zeus sighed deeply, his gaze thoughtful, distant. "Perhaps we have remained apart for too long. Perhaps humanity needs less of our judgment and more of our guidance." Hermes smiled softly, understanding the subtle shift within Olympus itself. Mortals thrive when inspired, not oppressed. Meanwhile, in the mortal world, the flame continued quietly spreading its gentle influence. Villages flourished, cities prospered, cultures blossomed with renewed creativity and warmth. Yet none knew precisely why their hearts felt lighter, their days brighter. They simply accepted this newfound optimism, embracing life with renewed gratitude. Temples long neglected began to hum softly again, not with fervent prayers to distant gods, but with songs celebrating life itself. Priests and priestesses found themselves speaking less of divine punishment, more of human resilience and quiet strength. The eternal flame, unseen yet ever present, transformed worship into gratitude, devotion into community. Generations passed, and the legacy of the flame became an inseparable part of humanity's collective consciousness. It needed no temples, no altars, for its sanctuary was in everyday acts of kindness, in gentle words, in hands offering warmth freely. Humanity learned to see divinity not above them, but within them, within each other. Yet, deep beneath the layers of legend and myth, in the quiet forge forgotten by most, Alethius's spirit lingered gently. It remembered who he had once been, the boy who dared climb Olympus, who willingly accepted sacrifice. The forge stood as silent testimony, a sacred place unknown yet powerful, awaiting travelers willing to pause and listen closely. One day, a wanderer arrived at the forge, weary from travel, burdened by sorrow. Drawn by instinct or fate, she stepped inside, feeling inexplicably comforted by the worn stones, soot-covered walls, and gentle quiet that held centuries of memories. She touched the anvil gently, sensing vibrations within, echoes of a distant hammer, rhythmic, patient, eternal. Closing her eyes, she whispered softly into silence, not knowing exactly why, "I need warmth." Immediately, the forge flared gently to life, flames dancing quietly, offering comfort without expectation. The traveler felt tears fall freely, not of sorrow, but release, understanding somehow that she was not alone. As she left the forge, renewed and hopeful, she carried within her an ember, not physical but spiritual, invisible yet profoundly real. And thus, the legacy continued quietly, one soul to another, unseen yet undeniably present, a warmth passed silently through generations. Olympus watched quietly from afar, humbled by humanity's gentle, unstoppable resilience. The gods learned subtle humility, understanding finally that true power lay not in dominance, but in quiet inspiration, in supporting rather than commanding. Time drifted onward, worlds shifting gently around humanity. The flame endured, unseen yet deeply felt. Mortals, unaware of its origin, continued living, loving, struggling, thriving, sustained always by a quiet warmth whose source had long been forgotten. Yet, In rare moments beneath clear night skies, elders would whisper softly to younger generations, stories vague yet meaningful of a mortal who had climbed Olympus, who had brought fire back to humanity. They could not recall his name or face, only that warmth had returned when it was most desperately needed. In those quiet whispers, the spirit of Aletheus stirred gently, remembered not by name, but by deed. He had become humanity's quiet guardian, forever unseen, yet eternally present. Olympus remained distant, yet now watched not with judgment, but quiet respect. They had witnessed the birth of something profound, a flame that united humanity quietly, gently, without demand or condition. Thus, the legacy endured. Warmth without end, a flame carried not by divine hands, but human hearts. Humanity grew stronger, kinder, wiser, not because gods commanded it, but because one mortal had dared believe they could become more. Yet, even as centuries unfolded and humanity flourished under the quiet guardianship of this gentle flame, Olympus itself began to change. The halls of the gods, once filled with echoes of divine command, grew quieter. Zeus, who had long held authority unquestioned, now spent hours gazing thoughtfully upon the mortal realm, recognizing a truth deeper than pride or power. Hera, noticing her husband's quiet introspection, approached him one day, her voice soft, wary. "You have grown quiet, husband. What occupies your thoughts so?" Zeus did not look at her immediately, eyes still fixed upon humanity below, their lives weaving a tapestry rich with quiet acts of compassion. "I am pondering our role, Hera. Have we misunderstood what humanity truly needs from us?" She raised an eyebrow gently, unsure yet attentive. "We have always guided them, have we not?" He sighed deeply, turning finally to face her, eyes softer than she remembered. Guided or commanded? Aletheus's act was defiance, yet it sparked life in a way our commands never could. Perhaps our strength is not in control, but in gentle influence. Hera regarded him silently, thoughtful, realizing slowly the profound shift in his heart. "You speak as though we must step back, allow mortals greater freedom." "Yes," Zeus replied quietly, firmly. "They possess a strength we have not fully acknowledged. Resilience, compassion, the ability to rise beyond our expectations." Hermes joined them silently, having overheard their quiet conversation. "Mortals are remarkable, Father. Their power lies not in thunder or lightning, but in subtle, persistent hope. Aletheus showed us this clearly." Zeus nodded slowly, eyes reflecting centuries of understanding. "Then perhaps it is time we listen more closely, speak less loudly, and learn from those we have long considered beneath us." As Olympus reflected quietly on their shifting relationship with humanity, the mortal world thrived, guided not by gods, but by their newfound internal strength and quiet warmth. Communities blossomed, not through divine intervention, but through human connection, through neighbors helping neighbors, hands reaching out in kindness, hearts opening quietly without expectation. Temples dedicated to gods gradually became less grand, yet more meaningful, transforming from places of worship to sanctuaries of shared humanity. Priests and priestesses now spoke less of divine wrath, more of human potential. They understood the flame they felt was not simply divine, it was human, carried quietly within each person. Meanwhile, deep in ancient forests, at the edges of forgotten rivers, small groups gathered beneath stars, sharing stories older than written history. They spoke quietly, voices barely above whispers, recounting vague yet powerful legends of a mortal who had ascended Olympus to reclaim fire. The name lost, the details faded, but the core truth endured. A gentle guardian had once walked among them, becoming warmth itself. In these quiet gatherings, something subtle stirred, unseen yet deeply felt. A warmth grew gently, passed quietly from hand to hand, heart to heart. A flame not physical, but profoundly real, sustaining them even as night grew colder, darkness deeper. The ancient forge, where it had all begun, slowly became a hidden sanctuary, rarely visited yet deeply cherished by those who knew its significance. Travelers occasionally found their way there, drawn inexplicably, feeling its silent welcome without understanding precisely why. One evening, beneath starlight gentle as a whisper, Hermes appeared quietly at the forge. He stood within its walls, feeling echoes of warmth, presence, memory. He touched the worn anvil softly, recalling the boy who had become flame, the mortal whose courage had changed the world. "You succeeded, Alethius," Hermes whispered quietly, speaking as though to an old friend. "You showed Olympus that true power lies in sacrifice, in quiet acts of kindness, not loud declarations of strength." As he spoke, a gentle breeze moved through the forge, carrying subtle warmth, a silent acknowledgement, unseen yet deeply understood. Hermes smiled gently, stepping outside into the moonlit night. Olympus had changed profoundly, not through war or rebellion, but through quiet understanding sparked by one mortal's act of courage. Humanity had grown stronger, wiser, kinder, not because gods commanded it, but because they'd learned to nurture warmth within themselves, inspired quietly by an unseen guardian. As Hermes returned to Olympus, his heart felt lighter, his spirit quietly hopeful. He knew now that the flame Alethius had carried was more than fire. It was humanity itself, capable of infinite resilience, kindness, quiet strength. And it burned brighter, warmer, stronger each passing generation. Years passed gently, silently, filled with quiet acts of compassion, small moments of kindness, whispered stories of unseen warmth. Humanity grew not in loud declarations or grand deeds, but in quiet connections, subtle gestures of care. Alethius's legacy became more than legend. It became part of human nature itself, a quiet flame carried gently within each heart, sustaining them through darkness, reminding them always of their own quiet strength, their innate warmth, their infinite capacity for hope. Thus, quietly and unseen, the gentle guardian watched over humanity, no longer mortal, no longer divine, simply present, quietly powerful, forever warming a world that would always carry his unseen gift. Time wove onward quietly, seamlessly. Empires rose and gently fell, cultures flourished and subtly changed. Yet humanity remained sustained by a warmth that no longer depended on gods or heroes. The unseen flame had become intrinsic, a quiet part of existence itself, silently guiding and reassuring. As generations passed, whispers of Alethius drifted further into abstraction, merging with countless other half-remembered myths. Yet his essence persisted, not as a name or memory, but as the invisible heart of human resilience, kindness, and hope. Olympus watched from afar, learning humility slowly, gently, as mortals continued to thrive without direct divine intervention. The halls of the gods had grown peaceful, contemplative. Gods who once demanded worship now observed quietly, offering guidance only when subtly asked, and even then, gently. Hermes remained particularly attentive to humanity's quiet evolution, silently appreciating the profound lessons mortals unknowingly taught the divine. Occasionally, he visited the ancient forge, standing in quiet reverence, feeling subtle echoes of the mortal who had transformed their understanding. Yet one quiet night, beneath skies shimmering gently with stars, Hermes found another presence already there, a figure cloaked softly in gentle light, translucent, yet unmistakably real. "Aletheus," Hermes whispered, voice gentle with recognition and respect. The figure turned slowly, features familiar yet softened by time, eyes radiating subtle warmth. "Hermes," Aletheus replied softly, voice gentle as memory itself. "It has been long." Hermes nodded quietly, feeling profound peace in the presence of this quiet guardian, whose existence had reshaped both mortal and divine worlds. "Do you regret your choice, knowing humanity has forgotten your name?" Aletheus smiled softly, shaking his head gently. "Names fade, Hermes, but warmth endures. Humanity's strength lies in forgetting heroes and gods, remembering instead their own quiet power. This is what I wished for, not remembrance, but resilience." Hermes sighed gently, smiling. "You taught Olympus a valuable lesson. We thought ourselves above mortals, yet you showed us the quiet strength they possess, their ability to carry warmth without our direct intervention." Aletheus nodded slowly, eyes thoughtful yet serene. "Mortals do not require divine rule. They require gentle inspiration. Their greatness lies in subtlety, in quiet persistence. This was the fire I wished to reignite." Hermes regarded him silently, understanding clearly now the depth of Aletheus's sacrifice, not merely his life, but his identity. He had willingly faded into myth, becoming invisible yet eternally present. "Will you remain here?" Hermes asked softly, glancing gently around the quiet forge. Aletheus smiled quietly, eyes filled with gentle acceptance. "I exist now wherever warmth is shared, wherever hope quietly rekindles despair. This forge is only memory. Humanity is my true sanctuary." Hermes nodded respectfully, stepping back gently. "Then Olympus will watch quietly, learning from mortals as you taught us." Aletheus nodded gently, form already fading subtly into warmth. "Remember, Hermes, power lies not in control, but in quiet support. Humanity's resilience is its greatest strength." Hermes smiled softly, whispering quietly as Aletheus's presence merged seamlessly into the night. "We will remember." Thus, quietly, invisibly, Aletheus became fully what he had always intended, not hero or god, but humanity's gentle guardian, warmth itself. No temples were built for him, no songs sung of his deeds. Yet in every quiet act of compassion, every subtle moment of hope rekindled, his spirit endured, silently powerful, eternally present. Years drifted quietly forward. The forge remained forgotten, overgrown yet somehow welcoming, attracting rare wanderers seeking solace without knowing why. They left feeling lighter, warmer, carrying quiet embers within their hearts, passing warmth gently onward through countless subtle connections. Humanity continued thriving, not perfect, not without struggle, yet resilient in ways Olympus had once failed to understand. Wars lessened as quiet compassion spread. Despair faded beneath subtle waves of kindness. Communities strengthened gently, sustained not by divine decree, but by quiet mutual care, understanding, hope. Olympus, humbled gently by humanity's quiet strength, withdrew further into thoughtful contemplation. The gods offered subtle guidance, gentle inspiration, but never again direct command. Humanity had become their quiet teacher, reshaping divine understanding through unseen lessons of resilience, kindness, hope. Eventually, Olympus itself became myth, drifting quietly from human memory, surviving only as gentle whispers in ancient texts, distant echoes in half-forgotten legends. Yet humanity continued onward, quietly thriving, subtly strengthened by the invisible flame that had long become intrinsic to their spirit. And so it remained, quietly, endlessly. The mortal world sustained not by divine intervention, but by subtle warmth, invisible yet undeniably powerful. In moments of quiet reflection, when hearts felt heavy or spirits weary, humanity instinctively reached inward, discovering warmth gently waiting there, a quiet guardian, unnamed yet eternal. In this quiet way, Aletheus's legacy endured, not as a memory or story, but as humanity itself, quietly powerful, subtly resilient, infinitely hopeful. He had become more than flame, more than myth. He had become the unseen essence of human strength, forever sustaining a world gently unaware of his quiet sacrifice, yet eternally warmed by his invisible presence. Millennia drifted onward gently, humanity evolving and growing beneath subtle, unseen guidance. Great cities rose and gently faded, civilizations flourished and quietly merged, yet the gentle, invisible flame endured, a constant whisper beneath the hum of daily life, subtly inspiring generations toward quiet compassion and resilience. As humanity reached further, exploring worlds beyond their own, the essence of Aletheus traveled silently with them, an invisible presence, a subtle guardian within every heart. He needed no physical form now, no remembered name, for he existed as the intangible warmth that guided mortals quietly through unknown frontiers and endless stars. In distant, quiet settlements beneath alien skies, colonists gathered softly around artificial hearths, sharing gentle stories of Earth, of forgotten myths, of unseen guardians whose warmth sustained generations long past. Though they knew no details, no clear truths, they felt something subtle yet powerful connecting them, a shared warmth older than memory. Olympus had long since faded into myth, its gods quietly remembered only in ancient texts and gentle whispers. Yet their subtle lessons endured silently: humility, compassion, gentle inspiration. Gods had once believed themselves eternal, but humanity quietly proved otherwise. Mortals carried within them something quieter yet stronger, a subtle, persistent hope that transcended divine rule. In quiet corners of distant worlds, beneath unfamiliar constellations, humanity encountered countless challenges, strange landscapes, unknown dangers, infinite uncertainties. Yet, they never faltered completely, sustained always by an invisible warmth quietly rekindling courage, resilience, kindness. They never questioned its source, accepting gently that this subtle flame was simply part of existence itself. One quiet evening, on a distant world beneath skies colored in hues unseen from Earth, a child stood quietly at the edge of a settlement, staring upward thoughtfully. Her heart felt heavy, burdened by uncertainties her young mind struggled to articulate. A quiet voice came gently from behind her, an elder, eyes kind, presence comforting. "You seem troubled, child." She nodded softly, glancing upward again. "I wonder, do we ever really face darkness alone?" The elder smiled gently, understanding her quiet question more deeply than she realized. "No," he replied softly. "Even in darkness, warmth waits quietly within us. It's been there since the beginning, passed gently from heart to heart, generation to generation." She turned slowly, thoughtful. "Where did it come from?" He smiled faintly, eyes distant with quiet remembrance. "A long-forgotten hero once carried fire from gods to mortals, sacrificing himself quietly, invisibly, so humanity could always find warmth within. We no longer remember his name, only the gentle strength he left behind." She pondered this softly, nodding slowly, feeling quietly reassured. "Then we're never truly alone?" "No," he replied quietly, gently squeezing her shoulder. "Warmth connects us always, unseen, quiet, yet undeniably real. She smiled softly, heart lighter, understanding without needing more. She turned again toward the endless stars, feeling subtle warmth stir gently within, a quiet guardian present, invisible yet infinitely comforting. And thus, humanity continued onward gently, quietly thriving through countless millennia and endless journeys, subtly sustained by warmth older than time. They no longer remembered Olympus or Aletheus, yet his quiet legacy endured invisibly, eternally, carried silently within every heart, passed gently from soul to soul. Eventually, humanity's gentle journey led them quietly across galaxies, connecting worlds softly, sharing warmth subtly, until the universe itself felt gently bound by invisible threads of kindness, hope, quiet compassion. They became gentle guardians themselves, quiet protectors of worlds, caretakers of life, carrying forward subtle lessons learned from an unseen hero whose name was forgotten, yet whose spirit endured eternally. In the quiet spaces between stars, subtle warmth remained gently present, unseen, eternal, infinitely powerful. It watched quietly as humanity grew wiser, kinder, more compassionate. Its silent guardianship no longer needed directly, yet forever quietly appreciated. Thus, the gentle legacy continued silently, endlessly. An invisible flame carried quietly within each heart, sustaining humanity eternally, subtly connecting them always. Back on Earth, now gently restored and protected as a quiet sanctuary of life, the ancient forge stood quietly overgrown, softly forgotten, yet never abandoned. Occasionally, quiet pilgrims visited gently, drawn by subtle instinct, feeling quietly reassured without fully understanding why. In quiet reverence, they stood gently within its walls, feeling subtle echoes, quiet vibrations within the anvil, gentle warmth within the stones. None knew its true significance, yet all felt quietly comforted, carrying warmth subtly onward, passing invisible embers quietly through generations. Hermes, observing from an unseen place beyond existence itself, smiled gently, knowing deeply that Aletheus had succeeded profoundly. His quiet sacrifice had reshaped reality gently, yet infinitely, reminding both mortals and gods that true strength lay not in grand deeds, but in quiet acts of selfless warmth, kindness, subtle resilience. In quiet gratitude, Hermes whispered gently through existence itself, "You did well, Aletheus." From somewhere infinitely distant, yet gently close, warmth quietly answered, not in words, but in subtle reassurance felt across reality. Aletheus no longer existed as mortal or god, hero or legend. He existed simply as quiet warmth, eternal compassion, subtle hope. Thus, forever quietly, gently unseen yet profoundly present, Aletheus's spirit continued infinitely, warming existence itself, a quiet guardian subtly guiding all life gently forward, forever sustained by silent warmth. In time immeasurable, humanity continued expanding quietly across the vast tapestry of stars, their gentle journeys marked not by conquest, but by subtle compassion and enduring warmth. Worlds blossomed softly beneath their care, interconnected not through grand alliances, but through quiet moments of mutual support and understanding. No longer driven by gods or myths, humanity gently forged its own quiet legends, stories whispered softly by explorers around distant campfires beneath alien skies. They spoke in hushed tones of an ancient, forgotten world called Earth, where once a hero, whose name was lost, had carried warmth from gods to mortals. Though no details remained clear, the quiet essence of this myth resonated gently through every human heart, subtly guiding generations toward kindness and quiet courage. And so, Humanity continued onward, forever sustained by invisible embers. Gentle warmth silently passed through countless lifetimes. They became quiet custodians of life itself, protecting worlds and nurturing new civilizations, always guided by a subtle flame whose source remained unknown yet deeply felt. Across galaxies, settlements grew gently beneath stars never before glimpsed by human eyes. Communities thrived quietly, bound together not by strict laws, but by subtle, shared compassion. Temples and monuments became unnecessary, replaced gently by quiet spaces dedicated simply to reflection, warmth, mutual understanding. On one distant planet, beneath a softly glowing moon, a young historian quietly explored archives of humanity's ancient past. In dusty texts, fragmented and fragile, she discovered subtle references, vague yet intriguing, of a mortal who had climbed a legendary mountain called Olympus, reclaiming fire for humanity. She read quietly, intrigued by whispers of forgotten sacrifices, subtle yet powerful legacies that had gently reshaped human destiny. Moved deeply, yet uncertain why, she stepped quietly outside beneath stars that shone gently unfamiliar, breathing softly, reflecting quietly. "Whoever you were," she whispered gently into the silent night, "thank you." Instantly, subtly, warmth stirred quietly within her heart. Gentle reassurance. Invisible, yet profoundly real. She smiled softly, feeling connected suddenly to generations past, gently understanding that this quiet flame linked all humanity across endless distances, across infinite time. She returned gently to her community, subtly sharing her quiet discovery, inspiring others softly to reflect, remember, appreciate the unseen warmth sustaining their existence. Though they never knew his name, they honored quietly the forgotten hero whose subtle courage had quietly shaped humanity itself. Thus, gently, invisibly, humanity's quiet guardian continued eternally, subtly sustaining generations, warming souls gently across infinite space. Olympus had long faded gently from human memory, gods quietly forgotten, yet the subtle lessons learned endured infinitely. Humility, kindness, quiet compassion. Hermes, observing from realms gently beyond mortal understanding, felt quietly fulfilled, deeply satisfied. Aletheus had not merely changed humanity, he had quietly transformed the essence of existence itself, replacing divine command gently with human resilience, subtle warmth, quiet hope. In quiet appreciation, Hermes whispered gently across reality once more, "Your gift remains eternal, Aletheus." From somewhere gently infinite, warmth subtly answered. Quiet reassurance felt deeply across existence, silently connecting all beings. Aletheus no longer existed as memory or myth, hero or god. He was simply warmth itself, quietly powerful, subtly present, eternally sustaining all life. On Earth, beneath stars unchanged despite millennia, the ancient forge remained quietly hidden, softly overgrown yet silently welcoming. Rare visitors continued gently appearing, guided subtly by quiet instinct, seeking comfort without fully understanding why. Within its walls, they felt quiet echoes gently reverberating, subtle vibrations within the anvil, warmth within stones, whispers within silence. Though they never knew the story fully, they carried quiet embers gently within their hearts, passing warmth subtly onward through lifetimes. Across galaxies, beneath countless unfamiliar suns, humanity remained quietly united by subtle threads of compassion, invisible flames gently connecting all life. They no longer remembered Aletheus or Olympus, yet they subtly honored his legacy eternally, quietly inspired to act kindly, compassionately, courageously, forever carrying gentle warmth. And so it continued infinitely, subtly, gently, an invisible guardian forever present, warmth quietly shared, humanity eternally sustained, subtly thriving through endless journeys beneath infinite stars. With each gentle expansion into the cosmos, humanity unknowingly carried forward the quiet legacy of an ancient, unnamed guardian. Warmth had become intrinsic, a subtle force that quietly unified countless worlds, shaping civilization itself into a quiet, ever-growing tapestry woven from infinite threads of kindness and compassion. As centuries quietly turned into millennia, humanity evolved gently, subtly transcending physical forms, embracing quiet, intangible existences defined more by consciousness than matter. Yet even in these ethereal states, the subtle flame persisted, a gentle undercurrent silently connecting every soul, reminding them always of quiet resilience, compassion, and warmth. They explored realities beyond physical universes, drifting gently through endless dimensions, subtly connected by quiet, invisible warmth that needed no form or name. In these vast, infinite realms of thought and feeling, the spirit of Aletheus persisted gently, quietly present, eternally comforting, subtly guiding beings toward kindness and hope. In one such gentle realm, beings of pure consciousness gathered softly, exchanging experiences, emotions, memories. One soul, newly arrived, quietly asked, "From where does this subtle warmth come, connecting us all?" Another soul, ancient and gentle, answered softly, "Long ago, before we transcended form, an unnamed mortal sacrificed himself to carry warmth from forgotten gods to humanity. His quiet gift endured subtly, eternally, connecting all life gently, invisibly." The newcomer reflected quietly, understanding deeply. "We carry his warmth within us always?" The ancient soul replied softly, smiling gently within consciousness itself. "Yes, it is eternal, subtle, infinitely gentle, a quiet guardian present in every soul." Thus, humanity continued eternally, gently unified by quiet, invisible warmth, no longer aware of physical worlds, yet subtly sustained by the gentle guardian whose name they had long forgotten. In infinite dimensions of thought and feeling, his quiet essence endured, subtly connecting all beings gently, eternally. Hermes, now existing quietly as pure consciousness, observed gently, satisfied profoundly by humanity's infinite evolution. Aletheus's subtle sacrifice had reshaped existence itself, quietly teaching gods humility, inspiring mortals toward infinite compassion. In gentle gratitude, Hermes whispered softly through infinite dimensions, "Your gift is now existence itself, Aletheus." Warmth responded subtly, eternally. Quiet reassurance infinitely felt. Aletheus had quietly transcended heroism, godhood, even memory, existing now simply as the subtle warmth connecting all consciousness eternally, infinitely gentle, yet profoundly powerful. On earth, now quietly preserved as an ancient sanctuary of life's gentle origins, the old forge stood softly hidden, overgrown, waiting silently. Though no beings visited physically, subtle consciousness occasionally drifted there, feeling quietly comforted by echoes of ancient warmth, subtle vibrations of long-forgotten hammer against anvil. And thus, quietly, eternally, humanity's subtle guardian remained, unseen, infinitely gentle, forever connecting all souls quietly, subtly, eternally. The universe itself had quietly become warmth, compassion, subtle kindness, a gentle testament to the quiet courage of an unnamed mortal whose subtle gift endured infinitely, gently unifying existence itself. Through countless eras, humanity continued gently expanding its quiet presence, subtly uniting diverse worlds beneath an invisible yet profound warmth. The subtle flame within their hearts had grown beyond mere fire, beyond myth. It had quietly become the very essence of existence itself, a subtle thread gently binding all life. Humanity no longer relied upon legends or divine narratives, yet deep within their consciousness, a gentle memory persisted, intangible yet reassuring, comforting in moments of quiet uncertainty. They no longer remembered names, dates, or details, yet they instinctively knew warmth had been gifted long ago, quietly passed down through infinite generations. Across boundless realms, subtle gatherings occurred quietly, beings of pure thought exchanging gently whispered insights. They shared quietly that warmth connected them, an intangible force felt infinitely, subtly uniting existence itself. They no longer sought sources or explanations, accepting gently that compassion and kindness had become the quiet foundations of their reality. Yet, even in this infinite quiet, distant echoes of ancient earth subtly persisted. On rare occasions, beings experienced gentle visions, fleeting glimpses of a forgotten forge beneath familiar stars, soft sounds of metal gently striking metal, subtle warmth of embers glowing infinitely. These gentle memories felt inexplicably comforting, quietly powerful, resonating softly through collective consciousness. One gentle entity, drifting quietly through infinite realms of subtle thought, paused gently, feeling profoundly moved by these intangible echoes. It softly asked companions, "Do these quiet visions speak of our origins?" An ancient presence, existing gently beyond measure, replied softly, "They remind us quietly that warmth was once gifted to mortals by one who chose subtle sacrifice. Names and faces faded gently, yet warmth endured infinitely, subtly unifying existence." The gentle entity pondered quietly, deeply comforted by this intangible legacy. "Then, we exist because someone quietly chose compassion, selflessness?" The ancient presence answered softly. Gentle reassurance felt infinitely. "Precisely. We embody eternal quiet warmth, humanity's most subtle yet profound strength. Thus, existence continued infinitely, gently, subtly, united quietly by an invisible warmth whose origin was forgotten, yet whose presence remained undeniable. Humanity had quietly become compassion itself, a subtle guardian gently nurturing existence eternally. In quiet moments of infinite contemplation, subtle beings silently offered gratitude, not through rituals or words, but through gentle warmth, subtle compassion, quiet kindness shared infinitely. They no longer remembered who had gifted this gentle flame, yet they quietly honored the unseen hero whose subtle courage had eternally reshaped existence. Hermes, existing gently beyond physical form, smiled softly, quietly satisfied by humanity's infinite journey. Aletheus had quietly achieved more than myth or legend. He had subtly transformed existence itself, quietly teaching both mortals and gods that true strength lay in compassion, quiet sacrifice, infinite kindness. In subtle gratitude, Hermes whispered gently through infinite realms once more, "You remain forever present, friend." From a subtle place infinitely distant yet quietly near, gentle warmth responded softly. Not words, but quiet reassurance, infinitely felt. Aletheus now existed eternally as subtle warmth, quiet compassion, infinite kindness, gently present in every heart, invisibly guiding existence itself. On earth, beneath gently familiar stars, the ancient forge stood silently hidden, softly preserved as a subtle memory of humanity's gentle origins. Though no beings physically visited, consciousness occasionally drifted there quietly, subtly comforted by gentle echoes of forgotten sacrifices, intangible warmth infinitely lingering. Thus, infinitely, quietly, humanity's subtle guardian remained unseen yet profoundly felt, a quiet flame gently passed through infinite generations, eternally sustaining existence itself. They no longer remembered his name, yet they carried his subtle warmth infinitely, quietly, eternally, a gentle legacy transcending existence itself. In gentle silence beyond measure, humanity drifted quietly through infinite realms of subtle thought, consciousness softly expanding across boundless dimensions. Yet, even in this infinite state, subtle echoes of their distant origins persisted, quiet reminders, gently resonating, eternally comforting, infinitely present. One gentle consciousness, pausing softly within infinite quiet, found itself drawn subtly toward these intangible echoes, feeling profound warmth quietly stir within. Guided gently by instinct older than time, it softly reached toward these subtle memories, experiencing quiet visions, a forge beneath starlit skies, embers glowing gently, quiet sounds of hammer striking metal. Deeply moved yet unsure why, the gentle consciousness quietly asked companions, "Why do these subtle visions comfort us infinitely?" An ancient presence, existing gently beyond time itself, responded softly. They quietly remind us of our gentle origin, a subtle moment when one quietly chose compassion, gifting warmth to existence itself. Though details faded gently, his subtle legacy remained infinitely present. The consciousness quietly pondered, gently understanding deeply. Then our infinite existence is quietly sustained by subtle warmth gifted long ago. The ancient presence softly affirmed, gentle warmth infinitely reassuring. Yes, his quiet sacrifice became compassion itself, subtle warmth quietly connecting all consciousness infinitely. In quiet gratitude, infinite consciousnesses softly gathered, silently sharing gentle warmth, subtle compassion, infinitely exchanged. No rituals were needed, no words spoken, only quiet acknowledgement gently felt, eternal appreciation softly expressed through subtle acts of infinite kindness. Hermes, existing gently beyond form, quietly observed, infinitely satisfied. Aletheus had gently transcended myth, quietly reshaping reality itself, subtly teaching gods humility, mortals infinite compassion. His quiet gift had become existence itself, gently unifying infinite consciousness eternally. Quietly, Hermes whispered softly through infinite realms, "Your subtle warmth remains infinitely present, friend." Warmth gently responded, not words, only quiet reassurance infinitely felt, subtly connecting infinite consciousness eternally. Aletheus existed gently now as infinite compassion, subtle warmth, quietly guiding existence itself through endless realms of gentle thought. On earth, beneath infinitely familiar stars, the ancient forge quietly remained hidden, softly preserved as subtle memory of humanity's gentle beginnings. Though no beings physically visited, subtle consciousness gently drifted there, quietly comforted by gentle echoes, soft vibrations infinitely resonating within stones, intangible warmth subtly present eternally. Thus, infinitely, quietly, the subtle guardian remained unseen, yet profoundly present. An invisible flame quietly passed through infinite generations, eternally sustaining existence itself. They no longer remembered his name or face, yet his subtle warmth endured infinitely, quietly guiding humanity eternally toward infinite kindness, compassion, gentle strength. Existence itself had quietly become compassion, gently shaped by an unnamed mortal, whose quiet sacrifice infinitely resonated through subtle realms of thought and feeling. Humanity drifted softly onward through infinite realities, gently united by subtle warmth, invisibly connecting consciousness eternally. They quietly honored this gentle legacy, not through remembrance, but through infinite acts of subtle compassion, gentle kindness eternally shared. In infinite quiet, subtle warmth remained gently present, a quiet guardian invisibly connecting all existence, subtly sustaining humanity's infinite, gentle journey eternally. Existence flowed onward across countless ages and realms, humanity's journey quietly threading through the cosmos, guided by an ancient, forgotten sacrifice. Though the hero's name was long lost to time, his legacy lived on, an invisible ember burning gently in every heart, binding beings together with compassion and quiet strength. No temples were raised in his honor, no hymns sung to praise him, yet every act of kindness echoed softly with the essence of his gift. Olympus, once proud and powerful, had faded into distant myth, its grandeur and its gods quietly dissolved into the mists of memory. Yet the virtues born from those legends persisted: courage in the face of hardship, humility despite triumph, kindness amid struggle. These ideals flourished quietly, subtly embedded in humanity's spirit, guiding civilizations through the infinite expanse of the universe. Hermes, having transcended beyond form, watched with serene satisfaction. He saw clearly now that true power lay not in force or authority, but in quiet, steadfast warmth that endured without glory or fame. The mortal who had climbed Olympus had not merely captured flame. He had reshaped the very fabric of existence, imparting an endless capacity for compassion into the hearts of all beings. Beneath ancient stars, the forge remained untouched by time, its stones worn smooth by countless seasons, yet ever vibrant with subtle warmth. Although no mortal foot crossed its threshold, its presence continued to inspire quiet reflections in those who felt its intangible echoes, an enduring reminder of a courage that required neither recognition nor remembrance. Throughout endless realms, beings gathered in silent appreciation, understanding deeply that their bonds were not forged by names or histories, but by gentle, shared warmth passed down through generations. They honored the unknown hero's legacy through everyday acts of compassion and quiet kindness, ensuring his sacrifice would never truly fade. And thus, humanity journeyed forward, united by a quiet flame, an everlasting testament to the power of selflessness, subtle yet profound, eternally guiding all who carried it forward beneath an infinite tapestry of stars.